Our statehood. The international laws established in the Montevideo Convention on the Rights and Duties of States. A state must possess the following qualifications: a permanent population, a defined territory, government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. Allah's 5% nation-state is a state person of international law and possesses the following qualifications. A. Our permanent population. We, the original people for Allah's 5% nation-state, are a part of the permanent population of the original nation known as Allah's 5% nation of gods and earths, having our origin in this world near the wilderness of North America, near the geographic locations known as the Holy City of Mecca, also known as Harlem, New York, United States of America, non-domestic/non-commercial/non-residential. Official population estimation requires two components: an accurate initial population count and a method of time adjustment by which the initial population count is brought up to date. The renewal of this said population shall be modified based upon the three demographic components of change: fertility, mortality, and net migration. The population that is estimated for a specific date of this writing will be reviewed to ensure the quality and reliability of the official population estimate. We shall update every 5 to 10 calendar years the number of births, deaths, arrivals, and departures since the date of the initial population count. Several sources can and will be used to obtain an initial population count: a continuous population registry, a complete census enumeration, a sample survey, a partial census or registration of individuals, any kind of alternative conjecture, count variable, non-sensual count, or a conjectural estimate derived by means other than counting. Several methods can be used to adjust the initial population count to a given date. The initial population count can be adjusted by a continuous population registry, the balance of births, deaths, and migration, an assumed rate of population change, or in some cases, not be adjusted at all. If a change in geographic coverage occurs between the time the initial population was counted and the time adjustment was made, the initial population count shall be adjusted accordingly. In the broadest sense, the total population may comprise either all usual residents of the country or all persons present in the country at the time of the census. The total of all usual residents is generally referred to as the de jure population, and the total of all persons present as the de facto population. The term resident population may indeed reflect various concepts of population. However, the right of stay in the country or the simple registration of persons should not be considered sufficient criteria for identifying the usually resident population for international statistical purposes. Appropriate efforts should be undertaken to identify the usual resident population. We, the original people for Allah's 5% nation-state, are representing the de jure population of the original nation, autochthons, inhabitants of the defined territory, and are data-based and documented members for Allah's 5% nation-state. As the original nation, we have inhabited our defined territory long before and after any de facto population colored nations had migrated or invaded, integrated, or occupied our defined territory. Thus, we claim allodial title and or fee simple title to all land space, airspace, and water space as a matter of fact and law. As a nation-state, we stand under the divine covenant of our Creator, Allah, and under the jurisdiction of the UNI vs. All Constitution for Allah's 5% nation-state, UNI vs. All Charter for Allah's 5% nation-state, as well as the self-executed UNI vs. All Treaty for Peace, Freedom, Justice, and Equality as a matter of law and fact. All persons, peoples outside of our nation's school and outside of our defined territory are of the de facto population, who are operating in a commercial system under the color of law, appearance of law. B. Our defined territory. Our defined territorial land space shall be within the formal designation of borders defined as Allah, Youth, Justice Estates, Divine Trust Territories, and are as follows: Knowledge Region, now Y, New York, and now Justice, New Jersey. Wisdom Region, Sea Truth, Connecticut, and Master Allah, Massachusetts. Understanding Region, Power Allah, Pennsylvania. Master Divine and Divine C, District of Columbia. Culture Region, Victory Allah, Virginia. Now C, North Carolina. Savior C, South Carolina. God Allah, Georgia. And Father Allah, Florida. Power Region, Love Allah, Los Angeles. And Truth Unknown, Texas. Equality Region, Cypher He, Ohio. And See Allah, Canada. God Region, I Love, Illinois. Master I, Miami. Master Now and Wisdom I, Wisconsin. Build or destroy region Allah, zigzag zig, Arizona, and see Allah. Our defined territorial airspace shall be Class G airspace, which is uncontrolled airspace where pilots are required to be extremely vigilant, limit airspeed as much as possible, and use see and avoid techniques very carefully to avoid a mid-air collision. General limits on indicated airspeed within Class G airspace is 250 knots. We shall internationally navigate all navigable airspace. Navigable airspace is defined as the airspace above the lowest altitude at which airplane flight is authorized, which is 500 to 1,000 feet, depending on the area. Our defined territorial water space shall be the latitude and longitude for North America, 54.5260 degrees and 105.2551 W. We shall inhabit the rights to enjoy the free use of all bodies of water connected to and surrounding our defined territory/land space and all uncontrolled water space below our defined airspace. We, the original people for Allah's 5% nation-state, exist as the de jure population of divine original peoples, autochthons, inhabitants of North, Central, and South America. As original peoples, we have inhabited our defined territory long before and after any de facto population had migrated or invaded our defined territory. The defined territorial land, air, and water spaces shall be as parts of our non-state land in which we exercise our nationality laws. C. Our government. The governing laws for Allah's 5% nation-state shall be that we, the original peoples for Allah's 5% nation-state as nationals or state nationals, are governed under all the governing laws for the UNI vs. All Constitution for Allah's 5% nation-state under agreement with our divine officers, the self-executed UNI vs. All, Treaty for Peace, Freedom, Justice, and Equality, Peacekeeping Force for Allah's 5% nation-state Peacekeeping Force Monitoring Group, Ceasefire Commission for Allah's 5% nation-state, and Allah's World Manifest Intergovernmental Organization. All these organs, political subdivisions of our God-body politic, for our government shall function as multiple state entities under the state authority of Allah's 5% nation. State entity shall mean any entity in which, directly or indirectly, a state has a controlling equity or ownership interest or similar economic interest, or which that state directly or indirectly controls. For purposes of this definition, control shall mean the possession, directly or indirectly, of the power to direct or cause the direction of the management and policies of a person, legal entity, whether through the ownership of a majority or other controlling interest in the voting securities, equity, or other ownership interest in an entity by law, or by agreement between persons conferring such power or voting rights. State authority shall mean any organ of a state at each level of authority, whether the organ exercises legislative, executive, judicial, or any other state functions, and including, without limitation, all central, regional, municipal, local, and judicial organs, or any consistent element of such organs having the power to govern, adjudicate, regulate, levy, or collect taxes, duties, or other charges, grant licenses or permits or approvals, or otherwise affect the rights and obligations of any project participants, their successors, or permitted assignees in respect of project activities. We declare our nation-state and therefore our state nationals therein. All nationals, nation members for Allah's 5% nation-state are divinely and separately legally protected under the covenant expressed via the UNI vs. All Constitution for Allah's 5% nation-state and are documented trustees under assignment of will via our UNI vs. All Constitution, and trust via our revocable divine trust, and have delegated authorities and obligated allegiance to and for Allah's 5% nation-state. All nation-state and or school members' personal and or private properties, including intellectual properties of their very own conscious minds and wills, can or cannot and will or will not be held in trust via Allah Justice estates. Revocable divine trust also are deposited as intellectual and private property for Allah Justice estates. All nationals and state nationals for Allah's 5% nation of gods and earths, Allah's 5% nation-state, all divine trustees for Board of Divine Trusteeship and International Board for Divine Trusteeship, all divine officers for UNI vs. All Constitution for Allah's 5% nation-state, all board members for Allah's World Manifest International Organization, Allah's World Manifest Intergovernmental Organization, all the estates entrusted, scheduled under Allah U Justice Estates, Divine Trust Territories, the franchisor and all franchisees for Allah U Justice Estates, multinational franchise, all peace officers for Peacekeeping Force for Allah's 5% nation state, and all shareholders for Allah U Justice Estates, decentralized organization for autonomy, or an LLC, etc. are lawfully and legally bound and protected by the self-executed UNI vs. All Treaty for Peace, Freedom, Justice, and Equality, divinely prepared by Lord Messiah Allah, Divine Trustee for the Board for Divine Trusteeship. D. Our capacity to enter into relations with other states. The capacity for we, the original people for Allah's 5% nation state, to enter into relations with states is not based upon the exclusive entitlement of states. However, Allah's 5% nation state as an autonomous national and divine authority via the Allah's World Manifest, international organization, and liberation movement via the Peacekeeping Force for Allah's 5% nation state, are all capable of entering and maintaining relations with states and other subjects of international law. While the majority of states do possess that capacity, it is not a requirement, but a consequence of statehood. A consequence which is moreover irregular and dependent on the status and situation of a particular state. The capacity for Allah's 5% nation state to enter the full range of international law is the ability of our government to independently carry out its obligations and accept responsibility for them in turn. Our means of governance and independence shall be made manifest via the UNI vs. All Constitution for Allah's 5% nation state and UNI vs. All Charter for Allah's 5% nation state, thus exercising the effectiveness of government and independence, as well as our capacity to enter into relations with other states. The legal effect of recognition is the formation and continued existence of our nation state, whether dependent or independent of recognition by the existing states. In other words, Allah's 5% nation state as a political entity is to be considered a state under international law itself. Lawful legal relations may only arise with the consent of those concerned. The positivist theory states that, as such, the existing states either must consent to the creation of the new state or to its accession to international law and the international community. The notion that recognition does not bring into legal existence a state which did not exist before is known as the declaratory theory of recognition. The declaratory theory prescribes that recognition of a state is nothing